What if I told you that waiting until you feel motivated to learn a new skill is, mathematically speaking, the absolute worst strategy you can use?
It really is. I mean, it's a trap we all fall into.
Right. We all do it. You glance over at, that guitar gathering dust in the corner, or you look at that language app that's been sending you those passive-aggressive notifications for
Yeah.
months.
The little owl guilt tripping you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you tell yourself, I'm definitely going to conquer that. I just need to wait for this weekend when my schedule clears up,
I have
right?
a solid 2 hours to really dive in.
Yes. We mentally construct this like pristine, uninterrupted block of focus that, if we're being completely honest with ourselves, almost never arrives.
Ever. It's a total illusion,
So today we are entirely dismantling that illusion. Our mission for this deep dive is to engineer a sustainable learning habit that actually sticks.
which is so crucial.
It is. We are going way beyond basic productivity hacks here. We're looking into the advanced behavioral science of how to bypass your own procrastination.
Because it's hard.
Yeah, specifically for you, the busy person who is just exhausted by information overload and tired of putting your own growth on hold.
And the source material we're working with today provides this perfect isolated laboratory for this exact problem.
Okay, let's unpack this. What are we looking at?
So we're examining this fascinating 30-day case study involving a self-proclaimed chronic procrastinator,
Oh, wow. Relatable.
right? This is someone who openly admits they would typically choose a nap over doing any sort of deep work.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Exactly. But they committed to a challenge to learn English. But the parameters were, well, they were unusually strict.
Strict how? Like they had to study for hours.
Actually, the complete opposite. They were only allowed to study for 10 minutes a day.
Wait, only 10?
Just 10.
Hmm.
No cheating by doing more, no skipping days, and crucially, they had to act completely independent of sudden bursts of inspiration.
10 minutes a day? I mean, that sounds almost impossibly small.
It does. But we are going to look at why that tiny time constraint isn't just some gimmick, but rather a deliberate psychological mechanism.
Because the results of this experiment were highly unexpected.
They absolutely were. And it is important to state right up front that while this particular case study uses language learning as the vehicle,
And underlying mechanics apply to anything you want to master.
precisely, this isn't just about English. It's a masterclass in behavioral psychology that empirically proves why relying on motivation is a flawed system.
Yeah, so let's start with that fundamental flaw. Because to build a framework that actually works, we have to understand exactly why our previous attempts crashed and burned.
Right, the classic crash and burn.
Yeah. Our source material focuses heavily on what they call the wait for motivation trap. We tend to treat motivation like it's, I don't know, the gasoline required to start the car.
Which is a huge misconception.
Yeah.
The subject of our case study initially believed they needed to feel this surge of inspiration every single day before they could sit down and study.
But the source describes motivation as being more like a balloon floating in the wind, right?
Exactly. Some days the wind blows it right into your hands, and taking action feels effortless. You're like, yes, let's do this.
But other days, it's miles away, caught in a tree, and you have absolutely no control over its trajectory.
And if your entire system for personal growth relies on catching that balloon every afternoon, your system is inherently fragile.
It's going to break the moment the environmental conditions aren't perfect. It's like relying on the weather. One day you feel sunny and excited, the next day it's raining, and you're just, lazy scrolling on your phone for 2 hours.
Yep, doom scrolling wins every time.
Okay, that makes perfect sense for why we fail to start on bad days. But let me push back on the alternative a little bit here.
Okay.
The proposed solution is this rigid 10-minute cap. If I am an ambitious learner, 10 minutes seems almost too small to make a real dent in something as complex as learning a language.
It feels like a drop in the bucket.
Right. If I genuinely want to become fluent in English or master Python or learn the piano, shouldn't I be putting in an hour a day? At 10 minutes, won't it take me like 15 years to see any real progress?
It's a very fair critique,
Yeah.
but it fundamentally misunderstands how the brain processes ambition. What's fascinating here is what happens neurologically.
Okay, break that down for me.
When you set a goal to study for an hour or two, you are signaling to your brain to prepare for a massive expenditure of energy.
And the brain doesn't like that.
Not at all. The brain interprets this sudden, heavy demand as a literal threat. The amygdala essentially sounds an alarm that says, hey, this cognitive load is too high, it's going to deplete our resources.
So it generates resistance. It just says nope.
Exactly. This is exactly why those highly ambitious 2-hour study plans inevitably break by day 2 or 3. You sit down, the mountain looks way too steep, and your brain rationalizes delaying it.
Oh, I do this all the time. I tell myself, I'll just handle these emails first.
Yep, the classic delay tactic.
And then the emails take an hour, and suddenly you're too tired, so you push studying to tomorrow.
And tomorrow never comes. But by shrinking the task down to an almost laughable 10 minutes, you are intentionally bypassing the brain's threat response.
So the brain looks at a 10-minute timer and registers it as completely safe.
Right. It thinks, okay, I can do that. The barrier to entry is so low that the mind doesn't even bother generating resistance.
Wow, that's clever.
But here is the really critical psychological mechanism at play. Completing that seemingly insignificant 10-minute task generates a very real feeling of self-efficacy and pride.
Like a little dopamine hit.
Exactly. You get a tangible dopamine release from simply keeping a promise to yourself. And that neurochemical reward is what actually creates the energy for the next day.
Okay, wait, that actually completely inverts how we normally think about productivity.
How so?
Well, we usually assume the feeling of motivation has to precede the action. Like, I need to feel good to start, but you're saying the motivation comes after the action.
Precisely. You don't need to be in the right mood to execute a task. You just trick your brain into starting with a non-threatening 10 minutes.
And then the pride of just showing up manufactures the motivation you need to continue the habit tomorrow. That is wild.
You just need to lower the initial friction until acting is literally easier than not acting. Once you start, the motivation follows.
Okay, so that mechanism of bypassing the brain's alarm system explains how the subject managed to study English every day without quitting.
Right. They survive the 30 days.
But the most surprising element of this case study wasn't even their language progress. It was the unintended side effects.
Oh, the spillover effect.
Yeah, this singular tiny habit somehow spilled over and impacted entirely unrelated areas of this person's life.
And this brings us to the science of the chain reaction, which is heavily supported by research out of Stanford University.
Let me guess, BJ Fogg.
You got it. Behavioral scientist B.J. Fogg. He developed the tiny habits method. And the core philosophy there is that if you plant a very small behavioral seed, it will eventually grow into this robust system of discipline.
And our source material perfectly illustrates Fogg's research in action. Here's where it gets really interesting, because it's like falling dominoes, but in a good way.
A very good way.
The subject noted that after a week or two of maintaining this 10-minute daily routine, their behavior just shifted in other areas without any conscious effort.
Yeah, they started going to sleep earlier instead of staying up late.
No more doom scrolling. They started making healthier choices with their diet. They even cleaned an incredibly messy workspace, and they did it twice.
Twice in 30 days.
Right. So I need you to draw the straight line for me here. What is the actual psychological mechanism that connects studying vocabulary for 10 minutes to suddenly wanting to eat a salad instead of junk food?
It comes down to a profound concept called identity shifting. And it's driven by that same self-efficacy we were just talking about.
Okay, identity shifting.
Your identity is largely just a reflection of your daily evidence. When you successfully complete that 10-minute habit every single day, you are accumulating undeniable proof that you are someone who follows through.
So you're proving to your own subconscious, like, hey, I am a person who exercises discipline.
Yes. The brain constantly seeks congruence. It wants your actions to align with your identity.
Oh, I see.
So once your internal narrative shifts from, I am a procrastinator to I am someone who honors my commitments, that new identity inherently triggers a desire for other actions that match it.
So you start looking at your messy desk or your poor sleep habits, and your brain basically recognizes a conflict.
Exactly. It says, wait a minute, a disciplined person wouldn't leave this desk a total mess.
And because you already generated the pride and the self-efficacy from the 10 minutes of learning, you suddenly have the psychological capital to actually tackle the desk. By lowering the bar for this one tiny habit, you accidentally raise the bar for your entire life.
Perfectly said. Building a long-term system of discipline isn't about forcing yourself into some rigid, punishing routine through sheer willpower.
Willpower always runs out anyway.
Always. It's about engineering these subtle identity triggers. You tip over one small, carefully placed domino, and the resulting shift in how you view yourself naturally causes the larger, heavier dominoes to fall right in line.
Man, that identity shift is powerful. But And there's a big but here, an identity shift only matters if you actually remember to execute the habit on day 3 when life gets chaotic.
Ah, yes, the logistics of actually doing it.
Right. Let's look at the logistics because if you are a busy professional or, a parent juggling multiple schedules, how do you remember to initiate that very first 10-minute action every day?
Without just setting another alarm.
Exactly. Adding another stressful, blaring reminder to a calendar app seems like the fastest way to make the new habit feel like a horrible burden.
Which brings us to the tactical integration of the habit into your environment. The source material explores this concept of habit hooks.
Habit hooks. I love this part.
The foundational idea is that carving out brand new time in your day requires a high degree of cognitive effort. And if you're busy, you probably don't have that effort to spare.
You definitely don't.
So instead of creating a new time slot, you systematically attach your new tiny habit to an existing, deeply ingrained daily routine.
Like something you already do on autopilot.
Yes, you find an action you perform every single day without fail, and you hook the new behavior onto it.
You're just utilizing existing neural pathways. And the source had some incredibly practical, real-world examples of this.
The bakery walk was a great one.
Yes. So one example was as simple as walking to a local bakery. The subject already took this short walk almost every day, so they established a strict environmental trigger.
The front door.
Right. The exact moment they step out the front door for that specific walk, they automatically press play on an English podcast.
The walk itself becomes the trigger. It completely eliminates the need for a calendar reminder or an alarm. It just becomes a reflex.
It's so seamless. Another excellent example in the study was tied to a morning tea ritual.
Oh, the boiling water.
Yeah. The subject had this unbreakable routine of boiling water every morning for tea. They committed to writing just one honest sentence in English during the 2 minutes it took for the water to boil.
And these were not complex academic essays they were writing.
No, not at all. They were just mindful reflections of that immediate moment. They used really simple English phrases like, I really enjoy the flavor of the tea today, or I'm thankful for this quiet morning.
Which is brilliant. And for anyone listening who maybe doesn't have a peaceful morning tea ritual or daily bakery run, the source provided what might be the ultimate universal habit hook.
Brushing your teeth.
Brushing your teeth, you stand in the exact same physical location, looking at the exact same mirror every single day without fail.
Unless you're having a really bad day.
True. But the strategy is to place a sticky note with an English sentence, or it could be a coding formula, or a piece of industry news directly on that bathroom mirror.
So while your hands are busy brushing, your mind is just absorbing the information. 0 extra time required.
From a behavioral engineering standpoint, the efficiency here is remarkable. You are piggybacking on time that is already blocked off and actions that require 0 activation energy.
So what does this all mean? The best way I can describe habit hooks is that it's like sneaking vegetables into a kid's dinner.
That's a perfect analogy.
Right, you blend up the spinach and you just hide it inside the pasta sauce. You are essentially sneaking your learning moments right inside the mundane chores of your daily life. 0 extra time, 0 extra effort to initiate.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this is an incredibly effective strategy for combating information overload for busy people.
How so?
Well, when we sit down at a formal desk, open a heavy textbook, and declare, okay, now I am studying, our minds often tense up.
Oh yeah, you feel the pressure immediately.
You feel the burden of performance. But by embedding these learning moments into what the source beautifully calls the soft moments of the day.
Like walking, waiting for water to boil, brushing your teeth.
Exactly. During those soft moments, the mind itself becomes softer.
It's much more receptive because its guard is down.
Yes. The learning transitions from being a heavy, formal obligation into just a natural part of simply living. It's perfectly integrated into your existence rather than segregated into this stressful looming task.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. If I'm tying my learning to my morning tea routine or brushing my teeth, that assumes I actually have the baseline energy to get out of bed and engage with my day.
The bad day.
Yeah. What happens to this entire behavioral framework when you hit a wall of absolute burnout? I'm talking about the days where you slept poorly, work was a disaster, you feel a cold coming on, and your motivation is mathematically at absolute 0.
The days where habits usually go to die.
Exactly. What then?
The source material addresses this exact scenario. And I genuinely think it might be the most crucial component of the entire strategy, because you are right, extreme fatigue is the primary point of failure for most systems.
We all have those days.
To combat this, they introduce what is termed the bare minimum survival kit. though I personally prefer to think of it as tactical habit preservation.
Oh, I like that. Tactical habit preservation. That reframes it from merely surviving a bad day to actually protecting the psychological asset you've built.
Exactly.
So the source outlined 3 highly specific steps for those impossibly hard days. Step 1, brush teeth. Step 2, survive.
Always a good step.
Right. And step 3, say one single sentence in English or engage with your chosen habit for literally 1 minute and then go immediately back to bed.
And they provided a perfectly calibrated phrase for this exact level of exhaustion.
What was it?
The phrase is, "I'm tired today, but I'm still here."
I'm tired today, but I'm still here. Wow.
It's incredibly forgiving.
It is.
But I have to ask the skeptic's question here. Does 1 minute of effort actually do anything for skill acquisition? Like, if my goal is fluency, what is one whispered sentence on my way back to bed actually achieving?
For direct skill acquisition, almost nothing.
Okay, honest. But for identity preservation, it achieves everything. You see, when we experience extreme fatigue, we usually fall back on this toxic all-or-nothing mentality.
Right. We tell ourselves, well, if I can't do my full 10 minutes with deep focus, the session is ruined. It doesn't count, so I might as well skip it entirely.
But the moment you skip it, you break the psychological scaffolding you've spent weeks building. You introduce psychological degradation.
The what the hell effect.
The what?
The what the hell effect. Like, oh, I already missed a day. What the hell? I might as well miss a week. Once the streak is broken, getting the momentum to start again from zero feels infinitely harder than just continuing.
That is spot on. And this strategy redefines the very concept of consistency to prevent that. For most people, consistency means maintaining a high volume of quality output every single day.
Which is exhausting.
But this case study redefines consistency as simply maintaining presence. Experiencing a lazy day or an exhausted day isn't the actual problem. The human body requires rest.
Right. Healing isn't failing.
Quitting is the problem. The bare minimum survival kit acts as an emergency brake. By redefining the rules so that just 1 minute of effort is registered as a victory, you turn discipline from a rigid punishment into a form of self-care.
You preserve the identity of being someone who follows through, even when the actual output is negligible. Usually, we think if we don't do our full time, the day is ruined. But this changes everything.
Showing up for just 60 seconds on your absolute worst day keeps the neural pathway open. It keeps the behavioral chain unbroken.
And the source uses a very poignant metaphor for this, right?
Yes, they say it's like holding onto a thread even when your hands are exhausted. As long as you maintain your grip on that thread, the path forward is still there when your strength returns.
Holding the thread. I love that. It removes all the guilt associated with just being human and having a terrible day.
It acknowledges that you don't always have to push hard. You just have to maintain the connection, even if it's just the bare minimum.
And mathematically speaking, over the course of a year, the person who executes the bare minimum on their bad days is going to be vastly further ahead than the person who breaks their streak and quits for 3 months waiting to feel ready again.
The compounding effect of unbroken presence will always outperform those sporadic bursts of intense motivation every time.
Well, we have covered some truly transformative ground today. We shifted from the illusion of the perfect study block to the granular mechanics of behavioral design. Let's distill the core strategies for you to immediately apply.
Absolutely.
First, you must completely abandon the expectation of perfect motivation. Stop waiting for the internal weather to be sunny.
Let the balloon go.
Right. Instead, embrace the science of the 10-minute tiny habit to bypass your brain's threat response. Let the self-efficacy and the pride of finishing that small task manufacture your motivation for tomorrow.
Second, engineer your environment so that remembering to act requires zero cognitive load. Utilize those habit hooks.
Sneak the vegetables into the sauce.
Exactly. Identify your unbreakable daily routines, your morning coffee, your commute, brushing your teeth, and anchor your new learning goal directly to them. Allow the learning to hide quietly within the soft moments of your day.
And finally, when life inevitably crashes and your energy is entirely depleted, deploy your tactical habit preservation.
The bare minimum survival kit.
Give yourself total permission to do just 1 minute. Say your one sentence. Hold the thread. Prevent the psychological degradation of a broken chain.
Because you truly do not need to be flawless to master a new skill or stay deeply informed. You just need to show up gently, consistently, day by day.
And if you're wondering when to begin, the optimal time is right now. You don't need a clear weekend. Look at your schedule today and identify just 10 quiet minutes.
That is all it takes to plant the seed of your own behavioral chain reaction.
It's the perfect starting line. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over something that expands this framework beyond just personal productivity.
Oh, where are we going with this?
Well, we unpacked how a mere 10 minutes of daily learning generated a profound identity shift for this one individual, right? Cascading unconsciously into better sleep, healthier eating, and a cleaner environment.
Right, the domino effect.
But what if we zoomed out? What would happen if an entire family or, an entire team at work consciously adopted the exact same 10-minute tiny habit together?
Oh, wow. That is a deeply compelling question. Applying the mechanics of self-efficacy to a collective group.
Exactly. If one person's small habit can trigger a personal chain reaction, could a shared communal micro-habit be the secret to synchronizing and elevating the identity of an entire organization?
I could see that fundamentally changing a company's culture.
It's definitely something to consider the next time you glance over at that unopened newsletter or that dusty language app. Maybe the perfect moment isn't some distant, cleared-out weekend. Maybe the perfect moment is right now for exactly 10 minutes. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the architecture of sustainable learning. Keep holding the thread.